everybody. Give me just a sec here. I'm going to make sure that I am live, and then we can go ahead and get started. So if you are popping on and can see me, just let me know. Say hey, where you're watching from. It's not coming up for me yet. Here we go. Perfect. All right, fantastic. So I am Stacy with New Creations by Stacy. I'm the owner and artist, and I'm an elite retailer here in Ardmore, Alabama, as well as I still have my location in Madison. So tonight, I wanted to come on. Well, actually, first let me start by saying normally Dixie Belle would be on with us tonight to help answer any questions or anything like that, but it's the holiday. Happy Labor Day, everybody. Thank you so much for those who have served or who have lost a family member serving. I know how hard, I know how that is from personal experience, but so happy Labor Day. But Dixie Belle won't be on tonight. I do have in the descriptions, the products that we're going to be using tonight. We're really going to focus on protecting, but then if we have time, we're going to come in and do some patina as well. And this is the dresser. I've done it all live so far, so I just wanted to finish it up live, or at least come close to finishing it up. But I do have my affiliate link, so if you're looking for a local retailer, just click on that. Top left-hand corner, it'll say find your retailer, put in your zip code, and you can find someone near you so you can go in, see all of the products, and get personal advice. Otherwise, feel free to message me on my page. I do have my Facebook link listed as well. You can also purchase through the affiliate link, and that always helps us out on the live. And if you are a retailer, and I'm going to get started after this, if you are a retailer, post where you're at, what your store name is, just in case there's somebody watching from your area. Hey, so I see several people coming on saying hey. I will, like I said, I may miss some of the comments just because I'm doing it alone tonight, but I'll go back and answer questions and pick up on anything I missed. So to get started, so I don't even think I've ever done a live with Protectant before. Usually I've already worked on a piece live, so by the time I get to the Protectant, I think, you know, who wants to see that? But tonight we're actually going to be using satin to protect the top. And then we are going to do some tinting of the clear coat to get kind of a cool glazed effect on the side. But it's the same process that you use to tint like gator hide or satin when you're going over like caviar or a really dark color so that you can eliminate those streaks. So we're going to do that tinting. And then if we have time, like I said, we're going to do some patina with the hardware. So that way you can see every single step of this piece. I've got 2 other lives with it on here. So to get started, I am actually going to be, on the top, we're going to be using satin. So I'm actually going to be using an applicator pad to apply it with. I have a brand new one here because they're reusable. You can wash them with soap and water, but I kind of forget a lot. So we're starting with a new one. I use my old ones for other things. Oh, hey, Zan from, let's see, the Other Side Vintage in Tallahassee, Florida. Oh, perfect. Antoinette said she's been wanting to see how to do the top coats. Oh, you know what? Thin is key, but we'll get into that. So I'm going to be using the applicator pad. That's my favorite method when I have a long flat surface so that I can get it easy and minimize, you know, potential issues with the streaks. Another option is the blue spongy, and that's great. It's a very dense sponge, so that makes it different from like the sponges you buy at the craft store, like a car washing sponge or something like that. And that makes a big difference when you're using it as a protectant. I do occasionally use this, but my preference is the app pad. Also, brushes. So like this front section and everything like that definitely is where I would use a brush. My favorite is the oval medium. A lot of people like the minis, which I don't. Yeah, I do have one out here. So this is a really worn one. But a lot of people like to protect with the minis. I prefer the oval medium. I can just get more on here. So that's my preference, but totally opinion. But tonight we're going to be using the applicator pad. And I do have one coat of satin on here. I did stain this live, so this is actually walnut streaked in with driftwood on top, and then I did go back and run a sander over it, a fine grit sander, just to take some areas down. I wanted this to look really worn, so it would match like the aging that I've got going on this piece. I still haven't done this corner, but so I am not tinting. I'm going over stain right now, and that's different than protecting over paint, which we're going to kind of do in a minute and we'll talk about. But I am actually going to go over, and this is clear coat. Clear coat, it comes in flat gloss and satin, and the dry time with a clear coat, you have a little more time to work with it before you will potentially see an issue with streaks. Gator hide though dries faster, less work time. So gator hide application, you just want to be a little bit faster, not work it as much as I'm going to here. So the blue paint colors, and when I post a picture of this, I'll post all the links because we painted this live last week on the Dixie Belle Paint Company page. But I used, let's see, Bunker Hill Blue is on the very bottom. Used some Cobalt, Pure Ocean, the Gulf, little sandbar mixed in for the highlights on the top. And I think that was it, but I do have a listing there. So with this applicator pad, I like to use it this way. And the reason being is when I go to protect, I want my hand flat on it. I don't want to be doing it like this to where I have it bunched up. I want to keep it as flat as possible. That's going to minimize streaking. So my hand is not big enough to do it this way, but I know a lot of people do it this way. There's one side that doesn't have a seam, so you can see. So a lot of people like to go this way because you can make your pass wider, which is also going to minimize streaking. I just always end up not keeping it even that way, so I always use it this way. So I'm going to dip a little bit of satin in here. So once I get going, you can see kind of, there you go, see how much is on there. So once I get going, I'm going to go because I don't want to have a spot that dries and then I'm coming back in to, I start talking and then start letting it dry again because that is going to maximize my potential for streaks. So, got this on. I started a little bit before the edge, and the reason that I do that is once I set it down and I go back, I'm going to have some excess. It's going to fall over the edge. I want to watch that. So I just want to point that out before I start. So when I go over this, I want nice long strokes. Dip a little bit more in, and I'm going to come back. I want to go all the way to the end. I don't want to work this a lot. I'm going to watch my ends and keep up with that so that it doesn't dry all gloppy there. So then once I get that and it's nice and smooth, I'm going to come back to this end and I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to try not to overlap too much, but because I'm going so quickly, it's not as much of an issue because this is, my first swipe is not starting to dry. So I'm not going to be, see I can go over this because I'm going so quickly it's not starting to dry. So again, close to the end, bring it back and make sure you get out all these little streaks. So I am using a new applicator pad and I am getting some little white pieces in here. I'm also looking from the side so that I am not, so I'm coming back over the middle. And where I have gone over, where I have like a little bit of excess protectant, because it's very white, you can see it up until it dries clear. I'm going back and smoothing that out. But at no point do I want to go back to this first part because that's already drying. So I'm doing this very thin. I'm thinning it, I'm making it very thin. Hopefully you can see here. And I'm I'm making sure that it's nice and worked in. And I'm watching from the side so that I can see where that slight shine is, because it's really hard to see whenever you're over it. So I need to know kind of where I stopped. Now I'm going to tell you what's happening right now. That little seam is affecting me, and that's why if you're going from the side, you want to use the side without the seam, because what's happening is some of the protectant is overlapping that seam. By the way, right now I'm lightly, I'm going to switch around so I have a new side. I'm lightly taking off that excess on the edges. And now I'm using the seam to get into the cracks here. But the reason I had that issue where I kept having to go back to the middle when I was laying it down again was because of the seam. The protectant was going over the seam and it was leaving kind of little bubbles up there. So I was having to go back and smooth those out. That's why if you're going long ways, use the side without the seam. So now I want to come over here because I've got quite a bit in the crack, and I want to be careful here because if I come up over that edge with this protectant and then try to work it, so I'm actually going on the side that has nothing, no protectant on it, so that I'm not actually working it in. I'm just using the sponge to pull that excess protectant off. And I'm using the seam to make sure I get right into that crack there. So, I am going to have no streaks as this dries. It's a very thin coat, so I will do 3 coats. I always do 3 coats of protectant. And I'm looking right now, I don't really see any spot where I'm going to have an issue. I was hoping at least to be able to point out like an overlap area or something like that, but I can't even see it. I go very thin and I pull a lot of it back with the applicator pad, and that's one reason that I really like using the applicator pad, because I feel like I have more control over where my protectant is going. So let's say I did have some streaking, I have an overlap issue. How do you fix that? And I'm going to talk about that just while I'm getting this edge in here. So if you do have a streaking issue, you don't want to really deal with it until you have 2 coats of protectant on. I mean, unless it's really, really thick. But the reason being, and the reason that I say that, I mean, I would never have a really thick coat because I'm just a very thin painter. But if you did have a really, after the second coat, if you did have some streaks that you need to get out, me personally, a very fine sanding grit block, equivalent to about 400 to about 600 grit. Otherwise, you can use a sanding block that's ultra fine, and then just go over it to sand those streaks out. 2 coats though, because you don't want to sand through in some places on the first coat and go all the way down to your base, whether that's going to be paint or it's going to be stain. You don't want to affect the integrity of your paint or your stain. So that's why I say 2 coats. If it's exceptionally thick, then of course after the first coat. You can also use quadruple steel wool, the 0000 steel wool, in order to buff that out as well. And then you can put your final protectant on. But that's pretty much it. So now, tinting protectant. Let me check the time. I think we will get to the patina. So if you guys have questions to ask, because I'm sure there's probably something that I've forgotten to say in there. by the way, under gator hide too, a way to avoid the streaks is to protect with flat. And the reason being, the paint is so porous and that gator hide dries so quickly. The paint just wants to like suck in the gator hide. It doesn't want to let it glide. So when you put a coat of flat over the paint, the gator hide will glide better over it so you can get a nice smooth application with it. So that's one thing. So the second thing is when you're working with chalk mineral paint, let me just make sure I don't have any questions to you. But when you're working with chalk mineral paint, you, oh, and it's a dark color, it's more likely to streak the tinting. You know what? I completely lost my train of thought. I'm so sorry. I just want to make sure I don't have any questions because this is something that a lot of people ask. Yeah, so like I don't have a problem applying satin and not getting streaks. So if you don't have a problem with getting streaks with satin, definitely put satin under the gator hide and that'll still help out because it's going to create that smooth flow. Just like with silk paint. That's why if you're going with a dark color like an Anchor, I don't have to tint or anything, or I haven't had to do anything, again, very thin coats, but I haven't had to do anything extra with silk because silk is a different base and it just glides right over the silk. So I haven't had any streaking issues with that. So if you're good with satin, use it instead of flat. It's the same principle behind it. Hey, Michelle. So I think those were the only questions I saw, but if I missed something, I will go back. But we are going to go ahead and tint. So if you're using the chalk mineral paint in Caviar, almost always whenever you protect it, and like gator hide or something like that, you get streaks. They show up more on dark colors. So tinting is one way to, outside of the flat, tinting is one way to eliminate that issue. So we're going to tint some, I'm going to move this over because we're going to work on the side. We're going to tint some protectant, but I'm actually going to use that tinted protectant for a glaze. But it's the same principle. You can apply it the same way. Same thing. So I'm going to go ahead and bring you guys down because we're going to do this on the side. Let me just grab my supplies first. And we're going to do a few things different here. You know, before I came out here, I've got my little, if you saw it there, my little mosquito keep away thing. Before I came out here, or when I got ready to do the live, hold on just a sec. When I got ready to do the live, I got bit like 4 times by mosquitoes. So anyway, hopefully that's not too loud. I can hear it buzzing, but I'm going to move you guys back a little bit so that you can see the whole side here. Please ignore my mess over there. I really didn't realize the angle before I started this. So yeah, definitely please ignore that. All right, so on the front, I did, if you watched last week on this piece, I used coffee bean to kind of, not quite do a glaze, but something similar to that. And on the sides, I didn't want to do that with an art brush. That was just too much, but I wanted to be able to create the same effect. And to me, the glazes don't they don't quite work exactly the same as kind of the look I was going for. So what I'm actually going to do is tint some protectant here. So in this case, I'm actually using flat. The main reason I'm using flat, though, has more to do with my supply. Whether you want to tint gloss, gator hide, whatever it is, same principle. So you do it the same way. I don't measure, so I cannot give you a measurement, but it is very little paint. You don't want to break down the integrity of your protectant. So just gonna throw some flat in here so you can kind of about see how much that is. It's not a whole lot, probably too much for what I need right now, but like I said, I still have a few of the drawers to do as well. So then we're just gonna take a little, I'm going in another compartment here. We're gonna take a little dot of coffee bean. You see that? Just very little. We're not even gonna use all that. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna use a paintbrush. Really doesn't matter. But literally, look at the paints I have on there, and I'm gonna start mixing that in. I'm gonna be able to tell by the darkness, kind of how much I have in here, and do I want a little bit more. If you're mixing up, you know, I would say if you're mixing up like 4 ounces of it, you don't really want a spoonful. So that's a little bit lighter than it should be. So I'm just gonna dot another thing of paint on here and mix that in with my brush. So like I was saying, if you're mixing up about 4 ounces of protectant, I would say no more than, not a spoonful, but like if you dip your spoon in it and you just pull the spoon out, there's paint that hangs on to that. I would say probably about one of that if you dip your spoon all the way in and then just put it in the protectant. So by the way, coffee bean is a really, really dark brown. So when you tint it, when you use it to tint, it comes up to kind of like a gray color. And I'm actually kind of using this to create a different effect, but let's say I painted this coffee bean. This mixture right here is what you would want to use to protect it. You could use satin, you could use gloss, you could use gator hide, but this mixture is what you want to use. In this case, I'm actually going to do some painting along with this and a little bit of glazing, sort of. Like I said, I wanted a quicker way. I needed my baby wipes. I wanted a quicker way to do what I was doing on the drawers, not using an art brush on a big side. So I'm still going to use this, but with this, it's very hard. That's why I like using it as a protector on the top. It's hard to get up here. So I also have a round large brush here that I'm going to use, but I'm going to use that with paint. So what I'm going to do here is dip the protectant in. So again, if this was coffee bean, I would just be doing a protectant. But you see, and actually I want more coffee bean in here. So I'm going to use this brush, and I'm going to put a little bit more paint on here. What I'm doing right now though, that first mixture is fine if it's a protectant and you're wanting to avoid streaks. I want this a little bit darker. So, because my purpose is a little bit different. There we go. So, and I'm not sure how well you can see this on camera, but I am creating subtle streaks of dark in here. And I'm wanting to do this because, like I said, I didn't want to do this with an art brush. I wanted to use it kind of like a glaze and get that look I was getting on the drawers. And I've already done the other side just so I could see how it would work. So, of course, if you are using this as a protectant method, you want to do like I did on the top. What I'm doing down here is a little bit different. I'm adding a little bit of texture by dabbing it, if you can see there. And the reason that I'm doing that is because this is kind of aged. I'm using this like a glaze. And the reason I'm not using the glaze is because you can't get quite this effect on it. So I'm actually going to come in and use my round small, because I'm going to come up here and I'm going to take some of this dark chocolate. I want it a little bit darker. Now this is still mixing in with some of my protectant here. And that's helping this not act like a paint, but still act somewhat like a protectant. So I'm going to get a baby wipe out, and I'm going to kind of paint with this a little bit. I want to smear it in. I don't know, but this is, You know, I used to have a glaze years and years ago that is not made anymore, and I do like the Dixie Belle glazes too, but that function more like this, and I'm liking this protectant using the flat as a glazing method. I feel like I can work with it better. I feel like I have less control. So what I'm doing right now, I want to get in there, so I'm flattening out my brush, holding it by the bristles, so I have more control as to where I am streaking this up there. Because I've got one of those lines, if you've ever done this, you know, where it comes out. So I actually forgot my mister bottle over there, which I really want for this streaking, but I think I can do it without it. So I've got a really dark line here. Just gonna wipe it back a little bit. That protectant, if this was right directly on paint and didn't have this tinted protectant in it, I wouldn't be able to wipe back like that. And that's one of the reasons you tint your protectant, to avoid the streaks, because it allows it to it allows it to minimize this. Well, it allows it to, the color in it allows it to minimize where the streaks are because it blends in with the paint. And if I just did this with paint, if I just came in here with the coffee bean without that protectant on it, there would be no wiping back. This coffee bean would just be on the blue, and in some cases it would be mixed in with it as well. So I'm going to also hold it again by the bristles. And by the way, as I'm doing this, I'm dipping my brush continuously. Each time I dip a little bit in paint, I'm dipping a little bit in the tinted protectant. And what I'm doing is it's almost creating it like it's an art brush where I have more control. I'm just lining in my grooves here. All right, and so I'll do this bottom section a little bit later. And I'm just gonna wipe that back a little bit. And so that's it. I've got some aging going on. Boy, you really can't see it as much. There's a lot of aging right in here where there's texture and that dark has grabbed onto it. A glaze will sink in, but this creates a slightly different effect than the glaze. But that's it. That's all you do. To tint it, you would protect it the same way. It's just you wouldn't have done all the extra with the wiping back and streaking more paint in either. So now once this is dry, I will go over and protect it with satin so everything comes together. This doesn't have a satin clear coat on it either yet because I still need to go through and age out these drawers as well. So we're going to go ahead, and I've got just enough time, I think, to actually get through the patina. I'll come back here later and finish dirtying up those drawers. But the hardware, I'm going to pop you guys back up again. The hardware here is what I'm actually patinaing. And I'm going to drop you down so you can see the table here. The hardware is what we're going to patina. And I originally, you said, so just a couple questions. I see some questions on here. Shane asked about the paint holders. I have the FIFO bottles, which those are from Webstaurant. And that just keeps the paint in good shape. I don't have to worry about the clumps or my lid's not coming off. I say that because you're going to see my patina in just a second here. But I don't have to really worry about that. There we go. So those are nice. Otherwise, I'm just using styrofoam plates here, so I'm guessing you're not talking about those. You said, can I do the back also? What do you, I'm not sure. Do you tint the second coat? So whenever you're protectant, it really depends on how you feel as far as tinting the second coat of the protectant. I only tint the first coat, but again, I'm a very thin painter, so that's not really, I usually don't have an issue with streaks to begin with. So if you're a thick painter, definitely you can do 2, and then the third coat, I would not. But I think either way you're fine, just depending on how you paint. So I really... Oh, perfect. Yes. I would think they ship internationally. So to talk about what we're doing here, I'm going to do a little patina. This is one of my favorite methods to do hardware. So the first thing you start with, because these are metal and I'm going to add an oxidizing agent on here to create the patina, you do want to go with Prime Start. So Prime Start is going to protect, see, this is what I was talking about with lids. So this was my issue before I started using those containers. My lids won't even go on anymore. I'm just terrible about cleaning them up. So anyway, though, you want to protect your, I've got several different phases here, but you want to protect your metal from actually rusting or degrading itself. So that's why you start with the Prime Start. If your hardware is wood and you want to use this method, there's no need for the Prime Start. And so the Prime Start, you want to use 2 coats of it. You don't have to. So if you read the can of Prime Start, it says that it's for use on metal, but it also says slippery plastic, which I don't know, unless you're using like a bonding primer, why you would put it on plastic, because it's specifically to protect metal. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. So anyway, you don't need slick stick was what I was getting to. I have used it though on some, there's some hardware that's just like super slick. And by the way, you do want to clean your hardware first, obviously. If you have a bunch of grease and grime on there, that's all that your paint is sticking to. So, if that grease loosens up over time or you've got debris that comes off, your paint's not going to stick. So, of course, you want to clean it first. So this was my first coat here. Hopefully you guys can see what I'm doing there. I just want to make sure I've got this end protected. So first coat, you want to wait 1 to 2 hours and then do a second coat. So this one has the first coat on. And, so first of all, let me tell you too, I'm not careful about the way I paint these. I don't care about texture because, the whole point of patina is, to me, you don't get naturally occurring patina without texture, so why would you want it smooth? But that's just my logic. So I just, get it on. I think it took me like 7 minutes to, do a round of this here. We're going to finish this up in literally less than 10 minutes. So 2 coats of the Prime Start. Ideally, you want to let it sit overnight so that it'll really set up, or 24 hours before you add the paint. The patina paint, but I have rushed it a little bit. Sometimes I will put it in front of a fan. I've also sped the oxidizing process up with the heat gun before, but really it does best naturally. So that is all you do for that part. So now these have 1 coat on them already. So for the patina to oxidize properly, you do need 2 coats. See, I can't get my lid off, so I've got to hit it on the floor to loosen up all that dried paint. And this is why you don't also paint out of your containers like you see me do. So you see how that is. It looks terrible. I use it all the time. I do a lot of hardware this way. And you want to stir it up because you want all those metal flakes off the bottom. The better you have it stirred, the better your patina is going to end up when you spray it. So that is bronze. Because I want some rust in these tiles back here. I have some nice, beautiful oranges. This is terrible. I can't get this one open either. But I have some nice, beautiful oranges. So I want a little bit of rust on the hardware. I also, it'll also help tie in the top with the bronze. And then I like a little iron. I want some dimension. Well, the iron is going to give me the rust too, but I also like the dimension with the change in colors. And then the bronze will give me a little bit of green because we're going to go with the green patina spray. But again, just stir it up really well. If you need any examples why you don't paint out of your jars, here they are. It's bad. I kind of get embarrassed sometimes because I know I really shouldn't do it, but I'm terrible with this stuff. Okay, so I do prefer to use a natural bristle brush. Now, I don't really know why. I just feel like the coverage is better. So I think probably for the amount of time we have, I may just do one of the handles, then we'll do the second coat on these two and go ahead and patina them. But, so this is pretty random. I take my iron and I like to dab it. It's going to give me texture. I want to put it on thick. The iron doesn't have the best coverage. And I do, so this isn't perfect, and this is one of the things I actually like about how this turns out. You want to try to remember, you want to try to remember where you put your iron, because when you go back over it with iron, remember it needs 2 coats, you need to have it in the same spot pretty well. To get the effect you want. I like a light patina on my hardware. I don't want it to be, you know, look like it's all rusted out. So that's one reason I like this method so much, is because some places just won't patina and I'll be able to see that beautiful bronze and iron look that this comes out with. And that iron, it always goes on really thin and it looks really gray. You know, when the whole process is done, you're not even going to know it. First time I used it, I was like, oh, what is this? But, so I do try to touch it as least as possible. It doesn't look like it right now, but I do try to not let my iron and my bronze get too mixed up, because that'll decrease the amount of rust and green, too, that you'll have. But this is my favorite, one of my favorite ways to do hardware. So that's just the first coat. So you let this coat dry about 1 to 2 hours, and then you're gonna come back for your second coat. I wanna get this one out of the way too, because I don't wanna get it sprayed later. So let's go ahead. Now, this step, you wanna work a little bit quickly because it will not patina unless it's wet. So it needs to be wet. The paint needs to be wet whenever you spray it. So we are going to, this is my iron brush. So I can tell here I had some iron. Now it does take a little while to patina, so I might have to post the effects of this a little bit later, but hopefully sometimes some of it will start to change pretty quickly. I don't have my heat gun out here though. I wish I did. So just putting it in some random places, coming back with the bronze. And I am going over some of the iron with the bronze. That's okay. Like I said, I don't want this totally rusted out. I like it to be very, very random, which I'm generally not good at. It's another reason this process helps me. I'm very symmetrical. But some things you want to be random because that's what's natural. know exactly the feeling, Shane. Every time there's a new launch, I'm like, oh. So anyway, we're going to use the green. I literally was just having that conversation with a friend earlier. But we're going to use the green Patina spray. So this comes with a little squirty nozzle on it. I don't really like that. I like these, and I'll talk a little bit about that, but I want to spray some on here before this dries. So that might have been a little too much, but I like these handy little bottles. You can get ones that do not have metal in the nozzle. There's no metal spring, it's plastic. So that way you can always keep your spray in here and use it. I feel like I have a little bit more control, and I feel like the spray comes out more evenly. So that's why I use these little bottles. If you do get the ones with the metal springs in them, over time the metal spring will rust and you'll just have to replace them out. But they're super cheap. I get them like at the Dollar Tree. Actually, I think they're even less than that at Walmart. So anyway, we've got this sprayed. So you do want to spray immediately. I did not get any on my brushes. If I would have got any of that spray on this would have immediately started oxidizing. And that can actually ruin your brushes. So I'm going to go ahead and we've got about 4 more minutes. So I'm going to go ahead and do this one as well while we're live. And so sometimes it'll start oxidizing immediately. Like I can see I got quite a bit there. It's going to come out with some green right in this area right here. So I can see how it's starting to oxidize. But the process actually takes like 24 hours. Usually you can see it happen within a couple hours though. So it really doesn't usually take that long. So I'm just going over this one with the bronze. Making sure got good coverage everywhere. All right. So that one's good. Now I want to go ahead and squirt it down a little bit. I need to be really careful. I also cannot get this in my paint because that will start my paint to oxidizing. I'm only doing 1 squirt on this one. I was hoping this would go a little bit faster if I did a little bit more, and it is. But that's it. And then I'll go to sleep, wake up, and I will have beautiful new hardware. One thing I usually do, though, to really give these dimension, and it is the next day that I do it, I do line them with gilding wax. So I just take a little bit on my finger and I go over the highlighted sections, and that gives it a really nice aged, but then you can also kind of a little bit elegant too at the same time. It's a beautiful look. I use this all the time with different types of pieces. I don't know that I'll use a lot of gilding wax on this one because this is an aged piece. So I kind of want to keep it that way, but I always come in with something just to give it that extra depth. So I'm going to go ahead and get all these closed up, but that was pretty much it. So we went over the satin, and I'll pop you guys back up because it should be dry now. So if we would have any streaks or anything, they should be showing by now, which I don't think we do. I'm not seeing any. Let's take a look. Well, let me push it back so you can see how it turned out. And this was the second coat. So it's looking really, really good. And I will put one final coat on it after that. And of course, I'm going to finish aging out these front drawers as well. But thank you guys so much for hanging out tonight. If I missed any questions, I will go back and get those. Feel free to message me on my page if you have any questions. If I forgot to mention anything. And tomorrow, if you go to my page and like and follow tomorrow, I will post a picture, or I'll put the hardware probably on the piece and post a picture so you can see how it turned out with the patina that we did tonight. But thank you guys again so much. Like I said, share this video if you know anyone who may need it for the protecting or the patina. This method for the patina you can use on anything. So I usually do a lot of like those little ceramic birds. Those sell like crazy with a metal look. I do those. I do like little ceramic pots, but mostly figurines. Those busts, those are great to patina as well. But anyway, sorry, I'm kind of digressing. But you guys have a wonderful night, a happy rest of your Labor Day, and take care.